Hi, I hope everyone's keeping safe and well. I wanted to do a wee video about the astrology surrounding the coronavirus crisis that we're in just now. And it's something I was hoping to have done a few weeks ago, but this is not my normal type of astrology, and as you would expect, there's a lot going on, so it took quite a bit of time, but I hope this is a useful summary. The type of astrology I do, which you'll know if you've already had your chart done by me, is natal astrology from a psychological perspective. So I have a look at your birth chart and use that to kind of examine who you are as a person. What are your strengths? What are your challenges? How do you relate to other people? But there's lots of different types of astrology. The oldest type of astrology is called mundane astrology, and that looks at how astrology relates to world events. And it's not something I've really known much about before this point, but it's actually been extremely useful looking into it, given what's going on just now. So it's certainly something I'll pay a lot more attention to in the future. I mean, and it would just be the kings and the emperors who would have an astrologer, to see if their kingdom was safe. It wouldn't have been for a normal person like you or I. So anyway, all mundane astrologers know that this is a big year. They knew something big was happening. They knew there was going to be some kind of financial crisis, although they didn't necessarily all speculate on what that would be, but some particularly gifted astrologers did. This is a French astrologer, André Barbeau, was writing an article on the 8th of June 2011 about the link between astrological patterns and global pandemics, and from his data he concluded that it may well be that we're seriously threatened by a new pandemic in 2020 to 2021. In any case, it will be a time of widespread discord. So the underlying pattern here is Pluto in Capricorn. Okay, Capricorn is about authority, government, the structures we have in our society, so the military, the police, large companies. It's very conservative energy. It's about conforming. It's about maturity and aging. It's about being ambitious and successful and climbing the ladder. So Pluto is the king of the underworld. So he deals with the realm of what's deep and what's dark and what's hidden, what's rotten and dishonest and decaying. And his job is to bring it into the light, to be exposed, where it can then be purged. So it's about crisis, it's about regeneration, it's about transformation, it's about letting things end so that we can begin again, phoenix from the ashes type stuff. It's also about power versus powerlessness. So when Pluto meets Capricorn, it's going to give that treatment to Capricorn things like our government, our banking, our financial structure, all the structures of the society. Pluto is now bringing the negative up to the surface and the corrupt so that we can see it and so that we can actually deal with it and get rid of it and start again with something new and something honest. Pluto is a very slow moving planet, so it spends a lot of time in each sign and takes a long time to complete a cycle. So the last time Pluto was in Capricorn was way back in the 1700s, and it was during this time where they had the US Declaration of Independence. So basically the British state had become corrupt and too powerful, and so it was overthrown, and USA decided to go alone. So interestingly enough, the USA is now having a Pluto return. The cycle that began with the Declaration of Independence is now coming to an end, and you can certainly see that theme of corruption rising to the surface. It's almost as if Trump is a personification of incompetence and corruption and everything that's wrong with capitalism, everything's wrong with our Western system of government just now, and it's right there for everyone to see. And the question is, what are people going to do with it? The former superpower is now really a figure of ridicule around the world. So what's going to happen? Is the going to be a completely new system of government, a new economic system in the USA? Are they going to rewrite the constitution? It's certainly a really significant time, and so it'll be interesting to see what happens. Before that, the Pluto and Capricorn period was in the 1500s, and this corresponded with the Reformation. And again, it's the same theme: excessive power, excessive corruption, this time in the Catholic Church, and the Pope was exposed and overthrown. So this time round, Pluto in Capricorn started in 2008, and as soon as it moved into Capricorn, we had the banking crash. We also had things like Woolies going into administration, a long-term institution that we thought would be completely untouchable, completely collapsed, and it was such a shock. Although, of course, since then we've had plenty of big name companies go in the same direction, but at the time it was really unthinkable. So this was a kind of warning shot, it was making its presence known from the very beginning. And at the time, people were making big noises about, we need to sort out the banking system, we need to sort out the corruption and bonuses and this, that, and the next thing, and we need to stop people taking on more debt than they can handle. But really, this didn't lead to much. We just kind of patched things up and carried on as before. And our financial systems, because it's always a case of we need to just keep moving forward. We keep needing to move up all the time. We keep needing to expand. But life isn't like that. Life has cycles. There's a time for expansion and abundance, and there's a time for contraction. And Cancer and Capricorn tend to be the axis in astrology around where these things happen. So I'm going to come back to the Capricorn story, but there's just a couple of other placements just now of the outer planets that I want to mention that are background to this story. So since 2011, Neptune has been in its own sign of Pisces. So obviously this is connected to the sea, and the whole symbolism of the sea is that it's endless and boundaryless and completely connected. And so this kind of shows how we're all interconnected. This is affecting everybody in the whole world, and it kind of shows how connected we are. The fact that a virus that starts in one part of the world can actually spread so easily to everywhere. We think we're all separate. Everyone argues over their boundaries and keep people out and this, that, and the next thing. But it does show you how small the world is and how connected we are, which on the one hand is positive, if we all kind of see each other that way and stop seeing each other as separate. But the problem is we have this contagion, this invisible virus that's taken over everyone, and there's also a kind of theme of confusion, and it can leave people feeling a bit helpless, like victims. Since 2018, Uranus has been in Taurus, and this has been linked to a shake-up in environmental issues. This very same year, we had Greta Thunberg starting her protest. We had Extinction Rebellion coming into play. So there was lots of environmental tensions going on before this, and it could be said that's one of the positive sides of lockdown. People aren't flying, so the skies are clearer, people can't sail, so waters are clearer, less industry, so there's less pollution. The wild animal markets in China have been closed down because of this, and we've got these pictures of animals running wild. I particularly like the picture of the goats, with goats being the sign of Capricorn. Taurus is also connected with the stock market, so this could be about shocks in the stock market, and it's also about our values. Capricorn's about money as far as money is a success symbol, but Taurus is about money as far as being able to buy nice things. So Taurus being about what's valuable to us, and Uranus being about shaking that up. So if Pluto went into Capricorn in 2008, all that time ago, why are things suddenly changed now? I mean, for about the past year, everyone's been feeling a difficult energy building up. If I had a pound for everyone that said to me, why are things so dark? Why are things so difficult? Everything just feels uphill just now. We've definitely been feeling something building up, and it's all obviously come to a head this year. And if you have a look at the chart, this is for the 12th of January this year, and you wouldn't really have to be a trained astrologer to see there's something imbalanced in this chart. There's this massive pile-up. Pluto's been in Capricorn since 2008, but now there's all these planets here as well. There's a very definite imbalance here, and these two planets weren't in Capricorn in January, but since January they've passed here as well. So there's basically a massive pile-up in Capricorn, and when there's an imbalance like this, when powerful planets gathered in clusters, it's thought that that's a time of global turbulence, either a crisis, a war, a pandemic. Usually goes hand in hand with a pattern like this. So the main players in this astrological drama are Jupiter, Saturn and Pluto. So I will come back to them and give them a wee bit more time, but just now I want to go over some of the other things that are here too. First of all, there's an actual asteroid called Wuhan that's here as well. There's no sign for it because we don't commonly use it. so we don't actually even have a picture of it to appear on this chart, but it's in the middle of this storm of planets here, which is absolutely amazing. So obviously that's been considered to symbolise the actual virus that originated in Wuhan. So here's the data for it. It was discovered in 1980 in the Purple Mountain Observatory in China. This moved into Capricorn on the 7th of January, and that was the same week that we had the first COVID death. Moves through Capricorn, hitting all these other planets, and moved into Aquarius in the middle of April. It'll turn retrograde at the end of May. It'll move back into Capricorn roughly about the first week in July, and then it'll go direct again at the end of August, and it'll not go back out of Capricorn into Aquarius until the end of November. So this literally symbolises the virus itself and the kind of back and forward nature of it. You know, we are expecting things to get better, maybe a resurgence, maybe to get better again, until we eventually manage to eradicate it or learn how to live with it. Following closely behind the asteroid Wuhan in the chart, we have another asteroid called Pallas Athena, and this is much more commonly used in astrology, and this is the goddess of wisdom and warfare, favourite daughter of Zeus or Jupiter, and she's associated with healing in the immune system. So the whole way through Wuhan's path, through Capricorn and Aquarius, Pallas is closely behind, and this kind of represents, you know, maybe our health service, maybe trying to wage war on this virus, trying to get ahead of it and eradicate it and keep people safe from it. We also have here the South Node, which is considered a malefic, a bad omen to add into the mix. We have the Sun, which is shining a spotlight on this whole situation. And I also want to mention Mercury, Ceres and Mars, which, as I say, catches up with these in Capricorn. So Mercury is all about communication, but it's also linked to commerce, travel, lungs and breathing. So Mercury entered Capricorn at the end of December, which is when this whole situation started coming to our awareness, but it's not necessarily been well placed. At the end of December it was square to Neptune, so it's given it a kind of foggy vibe to communication. In the middle of January it was square in Uranus, which could cause kind of disruption to communication. At the 16th of February it went retrograde, so again that causes problems and like blockages with communication. So I mean, this really represents what things were like at the beginning of this. We kind of were hearing reports that something was happening, but we're not really clear about what's happening. Is it going to affect us? Is it serious? Is it not serious? You know, what do we need to do? And I think, you know, the astrology really reflects that kind of difficulty in communication. Mercury finally went direct on the 11th of March, which happens to be the exact same day that the World Health Organization declared COVID-19 a global pandemic. So finally the message was clear. This was a serious situation that's affecting everybody. Middle of March again, Mercury moved into Pisces, so again this kind of more foggy quality to communication. 4th it's conjunct Neptune. 11th of April moved into Aries, so symbolising more clear and direct communication, and it'll go retrograde again June and July. In mythology, Ceres is the goddess of agriculture and the harvest, the protector of animals and the environment. And she was living an idyllic life with her daughter Proserpina until Hades, the king of the underworld, came and captured her and took her forcibly to the underworld. And Ceres was in such a rage that she decided to make the land barren and stop everything from growing. And she told Jupiter or Zeus that she wasn't going to change that until her daughter was returned. So Proserpina had to be returned to her, but she'd eaten some pomegranate seeds in the underworld, so she wasn't allowed to leave completely. She had to return for a few months every year. So the story goes that those few months are when we have winter, because Ceres is so upset that she stops everything from growing when she's apart from her daughter. There's been lots of talk during this crisis about food shortages, problems with the food supply. So Ceres will go retrograde in Pisces on the 7th of July, and there's a concern that those kind of food supply issues will intensify around about that time. Mars, the god of war, entered the Capricorn pile-up in the middle of February. So basically this just inflames an already difficult situation. On the one hand, it could represent, the use of new police powers to keep us all under lockdown, and there's also been threats of the military getting involved. And on the other hand, it could represent people rebelling and protesting against the lockdown. They want to assert their own will, they don't want to be told what to do. Stephen Forrest thinks Eris square Pluto is one of the main contributors to this current astrological situation. Eris isn't something that's talked about very often, it's not used very often in astrology. It's another dwarf planet, just the same as Pluto, although it's even more powerful and slower moving. And so these two really dark and difficult planets make us an exact square aspect about 5 times between the end of January this year and the beginning of October next year. Eris in mythology is also known as Discordia, so she's the goddess of strife. She's the sister of Mars, the god of war, and basically she just causes trouble wherever she goes. It was her who started the Trojan War, just for her own amusement. She's viciously competitive and cruel. She doesn't just need to win, she needs everyone else to lose as well. So you can kind of see this energy in this situation, perhaps in the kind of early stages where people were panic buying, so trying to buy up all the Luro, buy up all the hand sanitizer, this kind of over-the-top competition that doesn't actually help yourself though, because if for this situation to work, everybody has to use hand sanitizer to keep everything clean, to keep us safe when we go to the supermarket. So if you've bought it all, you've actually just shot yourself in the foot. But people under this kind of energy just can't help themselves. They just need to win. They need to get something from everybody else. I think you can also see it as well when the people who don't care about the lockdown rules, who are maybe doing really reckless things that put other people at risk, is a very Eris energy. But on the other side of the coin, you're getting people who are actually watching what their neighbours are doing and reporting them to the police. Apparently the number of reports to the police saying, my neighbour's left the house twice today. And again, I think this is a very negative, difficult energy, trying to cause trouble to your neighbours when they may actually not be doing any harm to people. On a kind of positive note, we really need to see in this situation that there is no room for selfishness. Every man for himself doesn't really work. This only really works if we all work together and work as a community and look after each other. And also, competition doesn't always have to be negative. If you're a competitive person, you're a competitive person, but you can channel that positively. So for example, the people currently researching ways to treat and manage this disease, if they are the first to find out something, that will be good for them personally, but it'll also be good for society. So that's a very positive way of channeling your competitive energy. So now I want to get back to the main players here, which are Jupiter, Saturn and Pluto. Richard Tarnas in his book Cosmos and Psyche pointed out that when these 3 planets meet in hard, difficult aspects, they're historically associated with dramatic world events and crises. So I've written a list here. So in the 1300s, when Jupiter was conjunct Pluto in Aries, that was when we had the Black Death, the worst pandemic there's ever been. In the 1600s, we had Saturn opposite Pluto and we had the bubonic plague. First World War happened when Saturn was conjunct Pluto. The Spanish flu happened when Jupiter was conjunct Pluto, and this time in Cancer. Just now we have Jupiter, Pluto in Capricorn. Capricorn represents older people, so it's older people that are more affected by this illness, whereas in the Spanish flu, Jupiter and Pluto were in Cancer. Cancer represents younger people, and it was more younger people that were affected by that pandemic. In the early 30s with the Great Depression, when Saturn was opposite Pluto. The Second World War, we had Saturn square Pluto. In the 80s, the HIV epidemic, we had Saturn conjunct Pluto. And in September 11th, 2001, we had Saturn opposite Pluto. Saturn is in mythology the father of Jupiter and Pluto. He overthrew his own father, he castrated Uranus, and then he took over as king of the Titans. But then he was worried that his own children would do the same to him, because to Saturn, holding on to his authority is the most important thing. He does not want his authority challenged. So he ate his own children, including Pluto. But Jupiter's mother, he was the youngest, so she decided to save him. So she tricked Saturn with a boulder wrapped up in a blanket and sent the baby away somewhere safe where he could be brought up away from his father. So when Jupiter grew up, he found out this story. He fed Saturn some poison so that he would bring up his children again. And then Jupiter, along with his brothers and sisters, waged a war on Saturn and the other Titans. And eventually, the new order won. Saturn was banished to Tartarus along with the other Titans, and Jupiter set up a new kingdom of gods on Olympus. So in astrology, Jupiter is known as the Great Benefic. It's all about good fortune, expansion, optimism, abundance, travel, entertainment, spiritual or religious beliefs. It was in Capricorn when Pluto moved into Capricorn in 2008, so it's done a full cycle since then. Last year it was in its own sign of Sagittarius, so that was keeping us from the worst of the difficult energies that were building up. It was thought that that's what was holding us back from recession. On the 2nd of December, though, Jupiter moved into Capricorn. So the day before, when it was in its last degree of Sagittarius, the degree of crisis, that's when the first case of COVID was found. So now Jupiter is not in a good place. Jupiter is not in a sign that it likes, and it's locked down and hemmed in by malefics on all sides. It's got the South Node, it's had Mars, it's had Saturn, keeping it in lockdown. And that just represents the way we're in lockdown. We don't feel positive, we don't feel abundant, everyone's worried about money, we can't go out, we can't travel, we can't go to our place of religion, we can't socialise with people. It's in a difficult place. Saturn is known, perhaps unfairly, as the Great Malefic. It's about authority, discipline, seriousness, responsibility, boundaries, limits, restrictions. It's about being conservative and adhering to tradition. So here's the timeline for Saturn. So it originally moved into Capricorn 20th December 2017, and then built up to the peak of this pattern, the conjunction with Pluto on the 12th of January this year. On the 22nd of March this year, Saturn moved into Aquarius. Now Aquarius represents freedom and the good of humanity, and Saturn obviously represents restriction. So the very next day, the UK announced lockdown. So our Aquarian freedoms are being locked down, but it's for the good of humanity, so people accepted it, people wanted it. 10th of May, Saturn turned retrograde, and on exactly the same day, Boris Johnson announced an easing of the lockdown. On the 2nd of July, though, Saturn will move back into Capricorn, and this may be a difficult week, the first week in July, because we've got Saturn moving back into Capricorn, we've got the asteroid Wuhan moving back into Capricorn, and we've got Ceres turning retrograde in Pisces, so that's a week to watch out for. And then on the 21st of September this year, Saturn will nearly get back to Pluto again. It won't be as much of a peak as it was on the 12th of January, but they'll be within 3 degrees of each other, so it's thought that there may be another peak to this situation the 21st of September. So Demetra George described this situation as a war in the heavens. So basically, Pluto wants to tear down corruption in the old system, Jupiter wants to build a shiny new optimistic system, and Saturn wants to stop both of them. You know, Saturn wants to hold on to his own authority at all costs, doesn't want Pluto scrutinising him, doesn't want Jupiter starting something new, and so will do whatever he can. And Saturn's in the strongest position just now, so will do whatever he can to hold on to his authority and hold on to the old order. There's lots of conspiracy theories around just now that this is somehow, the whole crisis has somehow been manufactured so that the state can take more power over us, you know, bringing in new laws that they were originally trying to bring in for 2 years in this country to lock us down, wanting us to take apps to track and trace what we're doing. And so there are people who think that this has all been deliberate. Now, we'll never know what goes on at that level, you know, it's well above us, but I think it doesn't really matter. I think the point is the Saturnian type energy will always try and hold on to its authority no matter what, and even if it's not deliberately engineered this situation, it will certainly use it to exert more control, especially if it feels under threat. I found it incredibly interesting that just a few days ago, when Boris Johnson was announcing easing the lockdown, and he described it as Persephone emerging from the underworld, which is exactly what's happening. You know, Saturn is trying to escape from Pluto. The authority is trying to get out of the underworld. So I just wondered if, you know, either this is quite an amazing coincidence, or Boris Johnson maybe secretly has an astrologer that's explained this pattern to him, or, you know, it's just the case that we're all plugged into these archetypal energies, and whether we're aware of them, conscious of them or not, we're still living them. I think this situation is interesting as well on the level of the individual. You can really see the contrast, the conflict between Saturn and Jupiter in people. You know, we've all got Saturn and Jupiter in our charts, but some people have a much stronger Saturn energy, while other people have a much stronger Jupiter energy, and the two types of people are in conflict just now. Saturnian type people are much more likely to be frightened of what's going on and frightened of catching the virus. They're much more likely to be trusting of authority. They see the government and our structures in society as parental figures that are there to look after us and keep us safe. They'll see lockdown and restrictions as good things because they're just there to keep us safe. They're also much more likely to follow the rules to the very letter and be very annoyed at people who aren't following the rules to the letter. On the other hand, Jupiter people are much less likely to be fearful. They're much more likely to be optimistic. And of course, the flip side of optimism is it can lead to recklessness as well. They don't necessarily believe in the state looking after them. They're more interested in their own authority, and they'll be much more concerned in this situation about the restrictions on their freedom, about the government taking too much control. So basically, the Saturn people don't understand why the Jupiter people aren't following the rules and aren't concerned about the virus, while the Jupiter people don't understand why are the Saturn people, you know, so interested in following these rules and not interested in looking at the long-term picture and are not concerned about the loss of freedom. So the two types of people think that they're right. You know, you can see this every time you log into social media just now. Both types of people think they're in the right and think the other people are in the wrong. But there is no right and wrong. Saturn's going to do Saturn. Jupiter's going to do Jupiter. You've just got to accept you're the type of person that you are, and that's fine. You need to work with and make the best of it. But equally, other people are the type of people they are, and they've just got to do the best they can. I think, you know, there's maybe a bit of that Eris energy, you know, stirring up trouble between the two types of people and stirring up the conflict between them, which just serves to make a difficult situation that bit worse. I found this very relevant quote from Roy Gillett. He was writing in the Astrological Journal about the current Pluto and Capricorn season, and this was way back in 2007 that he wrote this. So he was warning the upcoming Pluto and Capricorn period will see authorities turning their capacity to map into the very privacy of each individual's outer and inner life. Those in power will have the technology to track and trace all we do and have via one central database. Anyone who can gain access to the machine will have all they need to decide how we shall live our lives and to find and deal with us if we rebel. Very relevant to the current situation, but I like his later quote: the more we know, understand and work with each other on the human level, the more we develop the wisdom to ignore and reject the propaganda that will otherwise enslave us. So where do we go from here? On the 17th of December, Saturn will leave Capricorn for the final time in this cycle, and then on 21st of December Jupiter will join it in an exact conjunction in 0 degrees Aquarius, which is another big story. But in the meantime, for our current Pluto and Capricorn story, it means there's now less pressure on Pluto. The major planets have moved on to Aquarius, the South Node has moved back into Sagittarius, so Pluto can now go on and spend the next few years tidying up its work in Capricorn. So the picture you're seeing on screen just now is a map of the Jupiter and Saturn conjunctions over the years. These two planets meet every 20 years, but the significant thing about this year is it's shifted from earth to air. It's like a breath of fresh air almost after, you know, a disease where people are unable to breathe. For the last, since the last several hundred years, since 1802, the conjunctions have mainly happened in earth signs. But from this year until 2159, they'll happen in air. So this is a major shift. And this diagram just shows exactly why I love astrology. Life seems like random chaos, and in situations like the we're in just now, it seems like very scary random chaos. And then I look at patterns like this, the cycles of the planets in this absolute perfect and precise geometrical pattern. And it just makes me feel peaceful. It just makes me feel it's not random chaos. The universe is working to its plan. And I genuinely think everything's happening for a reason. Everything has a purpose, and just, this pattern here started hundreds of years before we were here, and it'll continue to happen hundreds of years after we are gone. The universe is perfectly fine, no matter what we're experiencing just now. The universe is exactly the way it should be. So I'd really just like to finish off now by saying, there's no doubt about it. It's a difficult year that we're living through. Feeling fearful, feeling depressed, feeling powerless at times is going to happen, and all we can really do is surrender to the things that are out with our control and do the best we can with the things that are in our control, and try not to lose hope, because it will pass. Obviously our first priority is to look after our health, look after the health of our family, and just remember that our mental health is just as important as our physical health. But in the long term, we really need to sort out the systems that we have in place. This has shown up any flaws in the system. Can we trust our government to look after us in a crisis? Are our financial systems actually working for us? Will they provide a safety net that we need when we lose our job, we lose our money through no fault of our own? Is the NHS properly funded? In a health pandemic, in a health crisis like this, we need to know that we've got a health service that can look after us. Are our employers looking after our best interests? How did they react when this came out? Were they more concerned about the well-being of their workers, or were they more concerned about their profits? How do we look at key workers in our society? Just a few short months ago, people were being described as unskilled, and the implication being that they were unimportant. And now we can see that it's these key workers, people who work in our supermarkets, the bin men, the delivery drivers, as well as obviously the people in the NHS. These are the people that keep the society going. So we really need to think about, we've got an opportunity here to think about the systems that we want in place, and make changes if they're not the way we want them to be. So thanks very much for watching. If you've got any questions or comments, please drop me a line. In this video, I've obviously concentrated on what's happening to us as a society just now, but in my next video, I'll concentrate more on how this crisis could be shown up for us in our individual lives. Take care.